So welcome and good evening and welcome to the launch, is it the launch of the Young Scholars Forum on South-South Cooperation. I wish I was 50 years younger. At that time we didn't have the internet, we had to go to the library to look up journals, sit there till late 11, 12 in the night, accessing papers and journals, whatever was there in the library. So in the South, we were at a big disadvantage compared with the North. Today it's different. You can access all the latest journals and information from your computer. So you're equal with your colleagues in the North. And in social sciences, you have the advantage because you have laboratories where all your information is there in the field. Of course, there is a problem in the sciences where you have to have big equipment. There we still have a disadvantage. But we have the brains and we have the access to information. So that is the challenge. We're as good as anybody else, except for access to highly advanced equipment. So let's take full advantage of this in the forum. Today, the opportunities for young scientists and researchers from the South are tremendous, basically because of connectivity and access to information. I think the forum has a great future ahead. I would like to see the forum develop online platforms and forums for exchanging research information and collaborating with colleagues across the South on research topics, putting out opinions on development issues as young researchers see it. Development, everybody talks about it, but to my mind, the starting point of development of people is education and skills. After that comes health, if you have to prioritize. If you don't have education, then it's difficult to take advantage of other things. First of all, education and skills, then health, then food and water, energy, and environment. So these are the things and if you try to tackle this in the wrong order of priority, then I think you have less efficiency. So anyway, the forum is a great idea, but it will succeed only if young researchers from the South participate actively in it and contribute, make full use of it. Today's forum, we will have presentations from 6 presenters and 2 discussants. So I will take the liberty of trying to limit the time so that we can, this is the job of the chairman, is to make sure that everything finishes in the time frame and so you can have your dinner. So each presenter will have about 10 minutes, 60 minutes, and each discussant will have 10 minutes, and then we'll have some time for people who are in the forum. So if that is okay, then I can call on the first in the list. Oh, okay. Yes.
Whom I interacted with during some of the ITech programs that were held in RIS over the last 3-4 years. As you all know that RIS conducts 5 ITech programs, and on an average 150 participants, 30 each in each of these programs, come to RIS every year. And incidentally, I was in charge of running the ITech course on learning South-South cooperation for last 3 years, and I came across around 35 into 3, around 100 such participants from all over the globe. And right from the beginning, I had a very keen interest to ensure that we can call them, some of them, back to RIS to share their experiences on South-South cooperation in general. Other than LSSC, we have 4 more ITech programs. One is on science diplomacy, which is coordinated by Dr. Balakrishnan. You have a course on SDGs. We have a course on trade, sustainable trade, and we have a course on international economics and trade per se. And we found that perhaps the most common and capable and potent integrating factor along these 5 courses is the issue of South-South cooperation. So Professor Sachin and myself had a long discussion as to whether we can have a sort of a forum during the Delhi process where we can invite them and make presentation of their research activities, whatever they are doing. And the proposals that we gave were immediately accepted, and we could realize the dream of having a young scholars forum. We gave a call for submissions. We got 82 submissions. And through a process of screening, of course, please don't take the word screening in a negative sense. It is not that screening means that the others were bad. We picked up the best 20 of those 82 submissions. And the result is that you are here. You are given an opportunity to meet some of your colleagues in that course, and also to be a more stronger partner of the network that we have developed of the ITech alumni. So I again formally welcome you all to the first session of Young Scholars Forum. But what was the purpose? Is it just to bring the ITech scholars back to RIS? Yes, of course. But that is not the only purpose behind this whole exercise. As I mentioned in the morning session, that one of the purposes of calling you back is to make an assessment of the impact of ITech programs. We are having ITech programs as a capacity building mechanism. We invited you, you joined us, stayed with us, for some of you for 14 days, some of you for a month. We bombarded a lot of ideas on you, and you went back. Do we assume that the bombardment really worked? Or is it for certain that whatever capacity building inputs were given to you were really converted into some capacity outputs? So this exercise today, and from today I hope during the next daily processes as well, will help us in assessing the impact of the ITech programs. What really happened and how and to what extent we have been able to generate the desired capacity through the capacity building programs that the Government of India institutes through the ITech programs. This is one of the main objectives behind, practical objectives behind having this Young Scholars Forum. I have a selfish interest as well. I am editing the Development Cooperation Review, so I require some materials for regular publications in the DCR. And this forum will ensure that I have a continuous flow of research papers and materials for publications in the forthcoming issues of DCR. So these are the intentions at very earthly level. But from a theoretical and research perspective, we were very, very concerned from an observation. You might have also observed it, that if you go through the existing research on South-South cooperation, you will find two very disturbing features. Don't take it at a personal level, but I am talking it absolutely from an academic perspective. Number one, this research on South-South cooperation is not South-led. This is led by researchers and institutions from the North. Most of the research on South-South cooperation, as are available in the literature today, as are published in the important journals today, evolved from northern institutions and often by scholars from the north. I have no problem with that. The scholars from the north, as you would readily agree with me, would have their own philosophical and theoretical framework to analyze South-South cooperation, which need not necessarily be identical to the philosophy or the methodological process that we have developed from a southern perspective. So time has come now to develop a southern perspective or southern theorization of South-South cooperation. And this cannot be done unless and until we have enough research material produced by scholars from the south with a southern perspective per se. So this is the final objective behind the development or conceptualization of Young Scholars Forum. I sincerely hope that over the years, maybe if I am a little bit hopeful enough, optimist enough, maybe during the daily process 6, I hope there will be 200 submissions. I expect during daily process 8, don't blame me if I am too optimistic, but maybe during daily process 8 we will have 300 submissions. Unless and until the number grows, our theoretical positioning of South-South cooperation cannot be strong. We'll tend to be explained about ourselves by someone who do not belong to us. So we have to break this vicious cycle, and the Young Scholars Forum can, I am hopeful and I am very confident and I am very sure, will play a very, very important role to this requirement. So wish you all the best, and you have your presentations from now. Dr. Balakrishnan will take care of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Milindo. I think I share your desire that we should have more and more presentations. Of course, we all have to read them carefully. Right. So we'll have to read them and enjoy the perspectives they bring. So I think we will start with the first presenter, who is Ms. Queeneth O. Ekocha from Teen Africa, Nigeria. You could just take, as I said, we'll try and finish each presentation about 10 minutes so that we have time for discussion. Please.
Thank you, Professor Milindo, and distinguished panel of panelists and my colleagues. First of all, I want to thank RITS for the opportunity given me to come back to India on the platform of ITech alumni to make a presentation. Thank you. Actually, I did my paper with a colleague of mine, Dr. Emeka Ilu, and our topic is on the role of intra-regional African trade in promoting South-South cooperation. The motivation of the paper stemmed from the recently signed African Intra-Regional Trade Integration Agreement, known as African Continental Free Trade Area, which is projected to create the world's biggest single market of over 1 billion customer base, with a GDP of at least $3 trillion. Due to the changes in the global landscape and harsh economic times, emerging markets like Africa needs to focus its efforts and resources inwards to sustain her economic growth. African Continental Free Trade Area aims to boost intra-trade by committing African countries to remove tariff of 90% of goods produced within the continent. African Continental Trade Agreement is an outcome of African Union Summit in Kigali last year, where 44 countries signed into the trade agreement. The implication of trading with a huge population could result in welfare, competitiveness, adjusted but high-value employment, and deeper regional integration, which promotes South-South cooperation. The paper raised some issues, and the main issue of the paper raised is low African export shares. When you compare the intra-African exports to other continents like Europe, you find out that Africa ranks the least among them. Europe ranks 69%, Asia 59%, North America 31%, while Africa is 17% only. As a result of market fragmentation, range of NTBs as practiced by some countries through quantitative import restriction, government license, etc., which restrict imports within Africa. Countries that have practiced that include Senegal, Burundi, Nigeria, and so on and so forth. Other issues are poor trade infrastructure, as seen in the poor road networks, the rail, the energy issue, and poor industrialization efforts. Africans trade with non-Africans more due to unfriendly trade agreements the continent entered into with other continents, like the EU. For instance, the AGOA, which is African Growth and Opportunity Act, provides Africans opportunities of duty-free access to the US market. Also, the EBA, which is Everything But Arms initiative, gives preferential access to Africans to the EU market on every other product but arms. And such opportunities, African countries are not enjoying it within themselves. So this makes them to trade more with non-Africans than themselves. The perceived or implemented solution towards these issues is the first and the landmark effort is the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is a step in the right direction. Also, there are cooperative initiatives before now and high-level interactions of some countries, especially the East African countries. For instance, the Kenyan government entered into a trade agreement with Mombasa to open up a clearing office in Rwanda, saving traders nearly 3,000 kilometer round trip by road. Other efforts include building of regional infrastructure like the Ethiopia-Djibouti electric railway network line, which stretches from the Red Sea to the Atlantic Ocean. This project was completed in 2007 and is a project that the regional leaders envisioned will become Pan-African Railway Network. Others include the joint industrial parks and economic zones, which were developed on the borders of Ethiopia and Sudan. That was in February 2018. More needs to be done because most of these initiatives take place in the northern and eastern part of Africa, but in the west, not much have been done. The intended or observed outcomes. It is hoped that if our African Continental Free Trade Agreement PAC is well implemented, intra-African trade will increase by 52% in the next 3 years. Currently, it is at 17%. This is according to UNECA 2018. It is also expected that there will be reduction in trade costs, especially within African countries, and trade will be facilitated also. Again, the Northern Corridor infrastructure products, initiated by the leadership of Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda, respectively, resulted in building a road and rail infrastructure that connects the Northern Transport Corridor from Mombasa to Uganda and Rwanda and even beyond. But there are challenges foreseen with this trade agreement pack. It is foreseen that there will be reluctance of many countries to commit to full liberalization, as this would amount to loss of tariff revenue, especially in the short run. When the pack was, when the AFTA was introduced last year, 44 countries, except Nigeria and South Africa, agreed to the pack. But thank God that recently they just joined, and this is part of the issue because there is a feeling that they will lose huge huge revenue from tariff. Another challenge is that local SMEs, which could not survive the competitiveness the trade agreement is bringing, could be crowded out, resulting in adjusted unemployment. Another challenge is that there will be coordination and harmonization issues of trade policies of different countries and the regional standards of different regional economic communities would pose initial challenges. Of course, the lack of willpower of most African countries will also pose as a challenge, and mismatch of political ambition and Africa's economic realities, which is seen in most African countries, might be a challenge to this initiative. Potential stroke realized contribution towards South-South cooperation. Increased intra-African trade through the African Continental Free Trade would lead to more integration of African countries, thereby deepening South-South cooperation. Again, the unification of African markets as a single market will lead to economic resilience. Also, after we contribute to the general welfare of South-South, particularly with regards to SDGs, this is because if the trade agreement is well implemented, it is expected that there will be economic growth and job creation, which will eventually reduce poverty in the region. It will also create opportunities for foreign direct investment in Africa and boost competitiveness in the continent, which strengthens its self-reliance, which is one of the core objectives of South-South cooperation. There will also be reduction of insecurity due to the emergence of supranational institutions, which emerge as a result of deeper integration. Of course, there will be increased production within the continent and also increased financial flows. Having said this, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite all the presenters to take their places here? The name boards have been put up. Please. Here you Okay, can I invite the next presenter, Ms. Maria Eugenia Pereira Martinez, who is from the Catholic University of Uruguay.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. I'm really happy to be here and sharing this panel with this distinguished colleague. Today I'm going to try to talk about the exchange, the trade, bilateral trade between Latin America and India. When I start to think about it and research about this, the first thing that comes up is that the trade between Latin America and India is far away to reach its potential. So I start to wonder how we can do to fix this. The next thing that comes up was that, well, I work in a university, I work in a business school, so we have a lot of contact with companies. And when we start to talk with the companies, they don't know India, or they are afraid of India, because there is a lack of information, really important. And I think that this might be a really common thing in Latin America, but also in India, especially when we consider that Latin America and the Caribbean are 33 different countries, 33 different realities, 33 different problems and challenges. So, when we start to think what we already have between India and Latin America, we see that most of the initiatives are concentrated in one country, and that is Brazil. Yes, Brazil participates in IPSA. Brazil is also in BRICS. So Brazil is the one that has a more close relationship with India. This is important because when we start to think how can we resolve this problem, Brazil has to take a leadership in this topic. So, if we start to talk about the bilateral trade, the first thing that we have to say is that the bilateral trade is increasing. It's really increasing since 2001. This actually gets even more high after 2006. But when we start to explore and see what's going on with the exports from Latin America to India, we say that the exports are really concentrated in one good. We mostly export to India oil, yes? And when we start to think, okay, who is exporting oil? Venezuela is the one that is exporting oil. So when we start to explore this, we can realize that the exports to India are really concentrated in three countries: Venezuela, Brazil, and Mexico. What about the imports? What about what we import from India? Well, the exports are a little more diversified. We import chemicals, we import vehicles, we import pharmaceutical products, and here the main actors are Brazil, Mexico, and Peru. Yes, but all of this is still really concentrated in a few countries. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is how can we make that trade, the trade between Latin America and India, are not only concentrated in 3 or 4 countries. So the first thing that we have to see is what we already have. What we already have to increase commerce. And, well, India and Latin America have 2 trade preference agreements. The first one was signed with Chile, and actually it was renegotiated a few years ago. And the second one was signed with Mercosur. We are talking about Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, not Venezuela, because Venezuela gets into Mercosur after we have this treaty. And, well, both of them are really, really focused on tariff. Yes, we don't negotiate anything else besides tariffs, and it's really, really small amount of tariffs. So we are missing to have an agreement in really other important issues such as non-tariff barriers or technical barriers, or other new things that now we are going to talk and we are starting to get into the new trade agreement. The second thing that we have to think is, well, when we start to trade between each other, how we can institutionalize the cooperation against these 2 parties? Well, Latin America has a lot of initiative on economic integration. Maybe besides Africa, one of the most continent with much agreement. I don't say that that agreement are working well or they are successes, but there exists. We have some experience on that. But there is one special agreement that involves all the 33 countries in Latin America, the CELAC. Yes, actually, the CELAC has two programs that make him talk with other countries in the world. The first one is with the European Union, and the second one is with China. Yes, this mechanism helps the Latin American, and the Caribbean countries, well, stick together and start to think a common strategy to get involved with the other party. And that is actually something really interesting to study. So, when we ask me to make some proposals, so how can we increase this? The first thing I think was to divide in two different scenarios. The first one is the multilateral diplomacy. Here I'm talking about, well, we have to create a mechanism that involves India and Latin American countries. And we have to use our own spheres, maybe, and we have to support and create a forum between India and Latin America, maybe a CELAC India forum. That will make us to think about each other, that will make us to know more about each other. The second thing that for me is really important is that we have to deepen the agreements that we already have. Yes, especially the Mercosur that was not renegotiated, and we also can see new agreements here. Peru, Colombia, and Mexico, the other countries from the Pacific Alliance, are more open always to think new agreements. But when I talk to agreement, I don't actually only talking about tariff. Trade is not only tariff, it's much more, yeah? I'm talking about, for example, negotiate new chapters. Actually, let me make an example. 2 years ago, Uruguay and Chile signed a new agreement, and they create different chapters. For example, a chapter especially for small and medium entrepreneurs, another about gender. Yes, gender was a topic that came up several times during the conference, and both countries agree a chapter on how help women to get more involved in international trade. How both countries can create jointly programs to support these women that are a really important part of the labor force. And this kind of thing is what we have to think about it. This kind of agreement is what we need to make between India and Latin America, agreement that helps to get to this vulnerable part of the population and not only helps big companies to even more earn more. Yes, so I think this is the moment to do it between this complicated context of trade war. I think that is the time to be more organized. The South Global has to be organized, and I think that if we can implement some of these things, India and Latin America can become a model of the South Global and become a model in creating better things through trade. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I'll call on the next presenter, Ms. Daniela Labuschagne-Smith from the IORA Mauritius.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair Ambassador Balakrishnan, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honour to be here with you today at the Youth Scholar Forum to discuss and provide thoughts on South-to-South cooperation. Throughout the globe, sustainability and cooperation between various stakeholders have become a crucial cornerstone of our time, and it plays an important role in sustainable development initiatives. Exploring new opportunities and partnerships, I'm delighted to shed light on the paper which I submitted for this conference, based on renewable energy within the Indian Ocean region and also within the Indian Ocean Rim Association. So IORA, as the apex regional body, seeks to expand understanding and mutual beneficial cooperation through a consensus-based, evolutionary, and non-intrusive approach. As a dynamic platform for 22 member states and 9 dialogue partners to promote the sustained growth and balanced development of the region, South-to-South cooperation and triangular cooperation is a moving force. The fact that 4 G20 countries chaired the association for a period of 2 years each have enabled the Indian Ocean region to take off by setting objectives and expanding and deepening cooperation amongst countries. Ladies and gentlemen, energy is an important source of economic opportunities. However, during the past century, energy has mainly been harnessed, as we know, through the exploitation of fossil fuels and natural gas. As a result, an extensive exploitation to the fossil fuels is now causing serious climatic damage. We have to be the change we want to see in the world, as the iconic father of the Indian nation, Mahatma Gandhi, stated. With the rising attention to climate change, it is now high time for the global population to shift from using fossil fuels to renewable energy resources for a sustainable and secure future for humanity. Today, the demand for renewable energy resources continues to rise within our region, especially in developing economies. Countries, cities, businesses, and consumers around the globe are embracing renewables as the preferred source of energy. It is estimated that the renewables can make up 2/3 of the energy mix by 2050, improving energy intensity and generating more than 11 million jobs. Yet, the Indian Ocean region has high potential for development of renewable energy, such in areas as hydro, wind, solar, and geothermal. Renewables are also important in providing a wide range of market and public health benefits by reducing pollution and providing reliable access to energy in remote areas. But despite the tremendous potential of renewable energy sources present in the region and globally, the transition to 100% renewable energy needs to be supported by various stakeholders. Questions are on the rise of how do we mitigate climate change? How do we ensure sustainability to safeguard our environment? And how do we get everyone on board to harness the possibilities in this area? So as we know, around 2/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions stem from energy production and use, and it is estimated that over 1.2 billion people do not have access to electricity, relying ultimately on charcoal, wood, dung, and coal for cooking and heating purposes. The Indian Ocean, as the third largest ocean, is known for its diverse potential in developmental, cultural, and resource aspects. Yet, how do we strengthen the regional cooperation? Which models are effective to use for renewable energy? How do we implement renewable energy throughout the region? How do we sustain this? And a very important question is, how do we implement an envisioned renewable energy architecture? Additionally, I would like to mention that the Indian Ocean represents approximately 15% of the global energy demand, which is rapidly emerging as a cost-competitive market. Countries such as Iran, Oman, UAE, and Yemen currently mostly use natural gas and oil, with the contribution of renewable energy being lower. Other countries such as India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka mainly depend on coal. Then we have Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. They meet their energy demands through oil, natural gas, and coal, with bioenergy also representing only 15% of their energy mix. And other member states of IORA, such as the Comores, Kenya, Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles, Tanzania, and South Africa, depend heavily on coal, which is around 50%, and bioenergy around 30%. However, all IORA member states are taking initiatives and strategies to have sustainability throughout the region. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the various renewable energy initiatives hosted and events by the Indian Ocean Rim Association, I would like to highlight the first Indian Ocean Ministerial Forum, which was held on the 21st of January 2014 in Abu Dhabi. This established new collaboration initiatives amongst member states and dialogue partners to accelerate the deployment and investment in this important sector. As a follow-up of this 2014 ministerial, we had an experts meeting once again in Abu Dhabi in January 2016. And then I would highlight a very important event we had last year right here in New Delhi. We had the second IORA Renewable Energy Ministerial and Experts meeting alongside the first International Solar Alliance General Assembly and second Reinvest Meet and Expo. This was hosted by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy of the Government of India. And it's important to also note that these events were jointly inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister Modi in the presence of the UN Secretary General. Throughout these events, important documents have also been endorsed by our Council of Ministers, such as the Abu Dhabi Declaration on Renewable Energy. And then we had the first IORA's Leaders Summit in 2017 for the 20th anniversary of the association in Jakarta, Indonesia, where leaders of the 22 member states came together and drafted the IORA Action Plan from 2017 to 2021. So this document highlights specifically for renewable energy the possibilities of exploring cooperation projects with the International Solar Alliance and the International Renewable Energy Agency. And then last year, IORA and the ISA signed an MOU in October 2018, which is an MOU specifically signed aimed at enhancing the sustainable development and deployment of solar energy within the region. We also have the Delhi Declaration on Renewable Energy, and specific key takeaways were developed by experts establishing a roadmap for IORA member states' engagements. Looking ahead, and as per the IORA Action Plan, a MOU between IORA and IRENA may be inked during the forthcoming chairmanship of the UAE, which will take over from South Africa in November. However, we should be mindful not to reinvent the wheel. And yes, at times the budget might be tight. But through collaboration and the sharing of best practices, building capacity and capability, a path of opportunity is unfolding for us. As listed in the key takeaways from the second Renewable Experts meeting, to enhance collaboration, innovation needs to be fostered. Research and development initiatives should be carried out. International collaboration should be strengthened. Long-term market policies need to be developed to meet competition from the established fossil fuels industries. We have B2B collaborations, we have the public-private partnerships, we have the UN SDGs to guide us, and ultimately a renewable architecture is required throughout South-to-South and triangular cooperation. Additionally, I would like to highlight the innovation and efforts being implemented by the IORA small island developing states, such as Mauritius, Comoros, and the Seychelles. Prone to various challenges due to climate change, policies are being developed and enhanced through the usage of the sector, wind farms, such as solar energy, biomass, and waste-to-energy projects. As such, the Seychelles is becoming one of the key champions in renewable energy to follow. As an individual from an island state myself, Mauritius, energy security is very important. As Mark Twain once said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. And this is exactly what the Seychelles is doing. As one of IORA's leading small island developing states, Seychelles is also known to be a blue champion for the blue economy. Just to mention a few, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would just like to say that ensuring affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all by 2030 remains possible, but it will require more sustained efforts, predominantly to reach some of the world's poorest populations and to improve energy sustainability. Without sustained actions by countries globally, it is estimated that 650 million people will be left without access to electricity by 2030. The global changes confirm that any country alone cannot face the new challenges and cannot secure its own energy sources. So there is a need to increase the cooperation amongst countries and to develop a roadmap inclusive of technology transfer, enhancing regional markets, and the sharing of best practices to build bridges, strengthening bonds between nations. Our future is renewable, and it all starts with us. As Henry Ford once said, coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. I take this opportunity to thank RIS for hosting this conference on South-to-South and Triangular Cooperation, for us to share important developments and views for the betterment of our global efforts and to leave no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure your paper will be the subject of a lot of questions. Invite the next presenter, Mr. Jean-Claude Neigararura from the University of Burundi, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation is about the role and the status of science, technology, and innovation in promoting South-South and triangular cooperation. I tried to do my research on African countries, but Africa has some regions. It means that if you go in the east, there are a community that we call East African Community. If you go in south, there is Southern cooperation countries, but I tried to focus on two regions, East African Community and Southern countries. As far as I'm concerned, in today's world, science and technology is of paramount significance in providing various solutions to many of existence problems and is considered as the only path towards sustainable development. By paying more attention to the role of newly emerging and advanced technologies, and by considering their great economy and the social benefit, African countries have no alternative but to pay extra attention to such technologies. It means that African countries, East African countries and Southern countries, they are trying to share experiences through science and technology. Because beside African countries, they have some partners like India, like China, like Russia, but between them, they try to share experiences in order to promote the South-South and triangular cooperation between them. But through this collaboration, there are some issues. There is the lack of progress in attaining food security, energy independence, efficient water management, tackling climate change. But there are also other issues. I tried to mention few of them. The formation of Southern African Development Community and the East African Community were the culmination of long process of consultations by the leaders of Southern African and East Africa with the broader objective of pursuing economic and social development in the region, namely energy, tourism, environment, and land management. And there are other elements which those countries are sharing. Other sectors are finance and investment, human resource development, food, agriculture, and natural resources, legal affairs, and health. These are fields in which those countries are sharing experiences through science and technology. Furthermore, science diplomacy seeks to strengthen the symbiosis between the interest and the motivation of the scientific and the foreign policy communities. For the former, International cooperation is often driven by desire to access the best people, research facilities, and the new sources of funding. Human-induced global problems that confront us, it means that African countries cannot be solved by any of individual group or agency or nations, but they have to be together in order to overcome some problems. And there are many challenges between African countries. It shows the need of training of different aspects of science and technology, training scientists, diplomats, and stakeholders in science and technology diplomacy, policy formation and regulatory matters in the urgent need of today. Okay, so they need training to be trained in order to overcome these challenges. But behind this, there are many challenges. I cannot tell all challenges, but let's tell some. There is code of conduct for technology transfer, acquisition and absorption of new technology, technology partnership, intellectual property rights, and the protection of traditional knowledge, biotechnology and information and communication technology. And there are other challenges that African countries are facing, but they are trying to do their best in order to promote South-South and triangular cooperation. The main focus would be on continual lobbying and buy-in for realignment of science and technology in promoting this South-South and triangular cooperation, as well as foreign policies and developing nations, so as to be able to sustainably leapfrog their economies through science and technology diplomacy, and be able to achieve quick wins through initiative in international policy relations. And they are also dealing with commercialization, exchange of information, capacity building, and for technology sourcing and building of science and technology partnerships. It is very important to African countries to be together, and they are willing to share everything in the matter of science and technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you.